It's about the I got to say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Gets the ball, gets back, pulls up for the win. Got it! Detroit basketball.
Holloman looks the clock, half court for the win.
The Lions go for it. The Vikings bring it. He's a pass. It's a touchdown to give. Javi Baez homered earlier. First one in the air, deep left field again. Yes, Tigers win. Javi is unstoppable.
This is BS Sports.
And away we go. Welcome one, welcome all. New intro. I realized I was a little late to do the new intro. I like to do a new intro once a year. And started the show in a couple of years ago, May. Then last year we had the new intro, and now we got another new intro. And I gotta say, shout out Javi Baez, because I was wondering, okay, what do I want to do as the final, ultimate, play to get into the show? And I was like, man, that Javi Baez walk-off a couple of weeks ago, that was pretty cool. So it made the cut, and hopefully that is not like a clip that will remind me of sadness in the long future. But anyway, we got a great show. Not great in the news department. It's going to be a bit of a downer show to some extent. But obviously Frank Ragnow retires. We're going to lead off with that. We got obviously Tigers. They won again. We're going to talk about it. The Knicks fire Coach Tibbs. I'm a little surprised that it happened right now. But I'm not that surprised in general. And of course, NBA, NHL Finals. I do have a little bit of a spin for both of those as it relates to the Detroit area teams. Mostly in the hockey department, because I haven't really done a whole lot of hockey talk, and it's been a little while since we've talked to Red Wings fans, and I think we got to talk to them. So anyway, look, let's just jump into it. Lions legend, All-Pro, captain, center, Frank Ragnow announced yesterday he was retiring from the league effective immediately. No final year send-off, no retirement campaign, all that. No, just Frank Ragnow no longer plays football for the Detroit Lions. He is no longer an active NFL player. Now, I want to lead off by saying, before we get into the football elements of this, Frank Ragnow is one of the toughest SOBs to ever play the game of football. You go ahead and look through the injury history of Frank Ragnow. I mean, apparently he had a fractured throat, or I don't know if it was a fractured or I don't know what it was, a sprained throat. I don't know how that happens. Like, I had a sprained ankle like a year ago. I don't know how you sprain this. I figure you just die. He's gone through foot injury, toe injuries. He's been through the ringer, and I kind of was worried a little bit in the back of my mind, like, well, even if he does play, he's pretty long in the tooth, been in the league since 2018. He's dealt with injuries before. He's still really good, but who knows how much longer he's got. But Frank Ragnow, the man, is incredible. He was a great leader. He was on the team during those terrible, terrible Matt Patricia teams. He stuck with it. He got to see the team rise up to be the back-to-back NFC North champs. So I hope he has a great retirement. With that being said, we're in a bit of a tough spot now, because it's not just that we now lose our all-pro center. We also lost Kevin Zeitler in the offseason. So that's two very good offensive linemen that were obviously very productive for you last year that you don't have in an offense that is primarily run first, with a quarterback that is primarily play action, big threat. I'm not saying all this to say, okay, the season's over, let's throw it all in the garbage. I am to say that this is probably the worst offseason news the Lions have had pretty much since the new administration took over. Like, outside of, I guess you could say, the both coordinators leaving. Honestly, this is probably worse, because this is an actual talent that you've had through different coaches, through different coordinators, through everything, that has consistently been very good for you. Now, I do want to say, because there is an element of the fan base that has this weird sense of like we're waiting for the bottom to fall out for this team. And look, do I wish we had a backup all-pro center to be able to take over for Frank Ragnow retiring? Yes, I do. Does anybody, and I mean literally any NFL team or any team, we can include the UFL, does any team have a backup for a surefire Hall of Fame all-pro center? If your answer is yes, stop lying. If your answer is no, that's life. You're going to lose these guys. There's a reason that Brad Holmes, the past at least 2 drafts, I think even going back further, has drafted at least one offensive lineman every year, and why teams, frankly, should always be drafting offensive linemen, because they typically do not, play in the league for 10 plus seasons. Sometimes they do. I mean, Taylor Decker is going to be coming up on 10 years. He was drafted in 2016, but he's a warhorse too. Who knows how much longer he's going to have? This might be his final go around. The Lions have drafted very well in terms of the position need of offensive line. You're probably going to see Graham Glasgow, Christian Mahogany, Tate Ratledge, all over the place in a sense. Does that bode well? Not necessarily, but it also does not make me, want to, shiver me timbers, because, well, Christian Mahogany was really good last year. Tate Ratledge was a highly touted offensive line prospect. And Graham Glasgow, he's been a vet of the league for a pretty long time. He was a consistent offensive line guy that we had this past season. He's played some center. I know the results are not all pro center worthy, but he's played center before. So at the very least, you have a veteran who has some experience at the position. As far as, the whole, are we now basically walking on eggshells with this season? I'll just say this. Every year around this time of this offseason, fans / media / commentators, they will find the thing that is wrong with your team. And that will be the largest issue in the history of the universe. Last year was wide receiver 3. The year before that, it was defensive coordinator. The year before that, it was your head coach is crazy. Every year, once you kind of run out of okay, there's clearly not going to be a whole lot of roster movement to this point. You're probably, there's not really another all-pro center out there you can just go ahead and sign or trade for. That's probably not going to happen. So what are we left with? We're left with a team that obviously has flaws, as every single team in the league does. But yet, you have a really good coaching staff. You have a really good general manager. You have a really good quarterback. You have a really good offense as far as weapons go. And overall, you do still have a really good offensive line. I don't think this team has gone from basically the potential NFC North champs for a third straight year to 5-12 sell at the deadline. I don't think we're at that point. But I also don't think it's, all hunky-dory. Losing Frank Ragnow sucks. It really does suck. It does not make your team better. How much worse does it make you? 1 or 2 games, maybe 3. Maybe instead of going 13-4, you go 10-7 or 11-4 or 11-4, please. 11-6. I don't know. Look, did I expect the team to go 15-2 when they lost Aiden Hutchinson? No, but they did. Frankly, here's another one. Did I expect the Philadelphia Eagles to win the Super Bowl when Jason Kelce retired? No. I don't think most people did. That's not to say that this is the exact same transaction here. Jason Kelce, I believe, retired right at the end of the season, so the team had more of a, pathway to go from there, whereas this happening just as OTAs are getting started. But I'm not ready to just say, okay, this season is a wash, let's all go crazy and, say, okay, the team is going to be terrible. Jared Goff is going to suck because he doesn't have an offensive line. I'm not ready to go there. However, would I appreciate if just a move, a depth move even, at another veteran center or a guy off a practice squad or even a sneaky trade, some guy on a team, whatever the case, I wouldn't be opposed to that in principle. However, once again, you're kind of at that point in the offseason. Your flaws are your flaws. You're just going to have to let the season play. Will it be, another, 11 game win streak like it was last year? Probably not. Will it be, a 5-game losing streak? Also probably not. Ultimately, it's June. You don't know what the team is going to look like. I don't know what the team is going to look like. I don't know what other teams are going to look like. For all we know, this is going to be, a quote unquote blessing in disguise because Tate Ratledge will be an all-pro rookie or something. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's going to be the case before people say that I'm just trying to cope here. I'm just saying, I don't know. Nobody knows. It's June, but it sucks. You lose Frank Ragnow. He is obviously an instrumental part on your team and especially your offensive line, but the guy was playing hurt pretty much the last couple of years. And he was still really good, which is crazy. So we knew he was on borrowed time, and the borrowed time has run out. Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard for me to get angry about that because I don't know. Maybe he wasn't thinking about retiring before the draft. I don't know. It's hard to determine. Like, I guess my thing is, would the Lions draft strategy have been different if they knew Frank Ragnow was going to retire? We'll never know because, for one, we don't even know how long they have known. I would be shocked if this was like a Barry Sanders situation and he didn't tell them at all. And if he didn't tell them at all, then frankly, that's on him as much as it is on them to, inquire about their players. But yeah, I mean, we still drafted offensive line. We still already had guys like Mahogany and like, oh my gosh, what's the name of the Manu, the other one. No defensive tackle and offensive tackle were some sort of need, but the Lions just seemed not to have a backup plan for Ragnow after his foot injury was revealed. Yeah, I just don't know, like, what would be considered a backup plan. Because I hear this and it's like, okay, I get the logic, right? You don't have a all-pro center to replace him. Understood. What would have constituted a replace if they drafted a center, like a first round center? They drafted a second round center, which they might have done in Ratledge, although he never played center. They're trying to move him there. Hopefully not Graham Glasgow. Well, I don't know. I don't think Graham Glasgow is going to be the worst center in the league. Certainly he's got. Whoa, hold on. Evan Petzold. That's Evan Petzold. He looks like a little boy. I've never seen Evan Petzold up close. That's crazy. I'm sorry, I got distracted. I don't know. I'm not too worried. I think Graham Glasgow is a very good offensive lineman anyway. As far as whether or not he'll be a good center, or at least as good as Frank Ragnow. No, he will not be as good as Frank Ragnow. But I think he'll probably still be fine. Especially now they might be ramping him up into playing the position a little bit more consistently, because he did play it last year. I know people will point out his PFF grades were not great, but I want to say he played center against the Seahawks, if I am not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. Could be wrong. I know he played a few games, but again, we're at that point in the offseason, man. It's like, find the team's flaw and just talk about it ad nauseum, which is fine. It's fine. You got to talk about something. I don't think it's a bad thing to do, but what do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? You know what? I'll call Brad right now and we'll see if we can get Jason Kelsey out of retirement. He's been doing all those Kellogg's commercials or Cinnamon Toast Crunch General Mills, right? Why do I know this? What this is the most American question I've ever gone by. Anyway, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. Obviously, again, not ideal. It wasn't the news I wanted to hear yesterday. Meanwhile, do we want to go bad or happy? What do you want to do? Because we could go bad and just like front load all the bad and end on happy, or we can mix and match, a little happy and then a little sad. I'm not really sure what I want to do. I feel like I want to just kind of front load the bad. That makes the most sense to me. We're gonna do that. So let's do that. Okay. Let me actually. Here we go. Just want to have this open, just for funsies. Just want to have this open. Okay. So Stanley Cup playoffs. The Panthers, they make their third straight cup. The Hurricanes blow a 2-0 lead in Game 5, and I will never forgive them for that because I thought maybe the Eastern Conference Finals would be actually kind of interesting. No, it was not interesting. None of it was interesting. And look, the Panthers right now, it reminds me a little bit of when the Red Wings were good, actually. Just a team that consistently is playing at, cup caliber play. And furthermore, a team that turns it on in the playoffs. That just they kind of sauntered into the playoffs and then, down goes Tampa, down goes Toronto, down goes Carolina. And they're in their third straight cup. They got a chance to go back to back. Team hasn't gone back, or obviously they've never gone back to back. Haven't seen back to back since Tampa Bay Lightning did it a couple of years ago. Here's my thing, because when I saw just how much success they've had, pretty much since, I guess you could say 2021-ish, around when they won the President's Trophy. I think that was 21. It could be 22. I don't remember. Early to now, 2020s. They've been consistently good. They've been good for a long time. They've sustained success, if you will. They haven't sold the farm exactly. They haven't sold the future, etc., etc. They've maintained consistent success, long-term success, not just short-term success for the Florida Panthers. If you don't get what I'm getting at, basically, the Florida Panthers are, I suppose in theory, what Steve Yzerman and what many Red Wings fans believe the Red Wings are building towards. And here's my question. Just seeing how good the Panthers are, ballpark, okay? How many years away are the Red Wings from being what the Panthers are currently? Is it 1 year? Are they just going to suddenly go make the Stanley Cup? Probably not. Maybe 2 years? 3 years? 4? Let me just break this down. If they are 2 years away, let's see, we're already in year 6 or 7. Yes, 6, because this is 2025. He's hired in 2019. So actually, no, next year it'll be the 7th season, I believe. So 2 more years from now will be 9. 3 more years, if my math checks out, will be 10. What are we doing? like we are so far apart from them that even after 6 years of rebuilding for quote unquote sustained success, we might be another 3 years from being at said sustained success. Let me just ask a question. Of guys that are on our roster right now, which one would be on that first line for Florida, if any? Your best player last year was Lucas Raymond. He had 80 points. Maybe Lucas. Maybe him, right? Maybe Raymond. Alex DeBrincat had 70 points. Maybe. Dylan Larkin, he also had 70 points, but, you're kind of pushing it. Patrick Kane, no. Mo Sider, no. Marco Kasper, no. Vladimir Tarasenko, well, he was on the team last year, but no, he wasn't on the first line. Comfort, no. Edmondson, no. So basically, we have 3 maybes, all forwards. And our best defenseman, Mo Sider, is not offensive in any way. He's got he has not matched his 50-point total of his rookie season since putting it up. So, we're talking about basically 6 years in. We don't have a single one where you're like, absolutely this person for sure, outside of maybe Lucas Raymond, would be a first-line player for a Stanley Cup team that is long-term sustained success, right? Not a single one of them would be on that first line, except for Lucas Raymond, maybe. How long is it going to take for people to realize that if it's taking you this long to develop more than one first-line superstar talent, that you're just not doing things the right way? Or at the very least, you're just not doing things the most efficient way. Is it true that, you bring up a good point. Kasper can get into the spot. The operative word there is can. As in theory, he can develop. Of course. Nobody's denying that. Nobody's denying that players that we have in our system could develop and be studs and be superstars. Here's the problem. They aren't here, and you don't know what they're going to be. We are now 6 years in. We're going to be 7 years in. And I got to be honest, I don't know if Red Wings fans even think that he has to make the playoffs next year. And if they don't, I honestly think you could just throw your fan card away and just go ahead and turn it in for a propaganda card at that point. Go ahead and stop being a fan and start working for the Detroit Red Wings and tell everybody how everything is awesome, and just wait until 2035 when Simon Edvinsson is Nicholas Lindstrom 2.0. Just you wait. I'm going to be eating my words when Simon Edvinsson, Marco Kasper, Moritz Seider, and Lucas Raymond are all on this team. I'm going to be eating my words. Then you'll see how competitive we can be. Look, again, if the Panthers are the standard, right? If the Panthers are that sustained success, right? Obviously you could say, well, how many young, they've got the guys, right? They've gotten their guys that they have. A lot of them they have drafted. Some guys they traded for. Some guys they've picked up and they've developed and they fit into a system. They got a coach who is solid. They have got their, core of guys, right? And their sustained success. They're not going to have to do a whole lot of crazy things to maintain what they're doing. In theory, that's what you would want for the Red Wings, right? Similar to previous, franchise greats and franchise, from that 90s to the early 2000s. That's what we're thinking. How far away are we from the Panthers? Because that's how far away we are from getting back to that. And if it's, frankly, any more than 2 years, I do not want to hear about it. And if you will say to me with a straight face that it is more than 4 or 3 years away, you can go ahead and I will turn in my fandom and I'll just find another sport to watch in the winter. I'll just watch the Pistons. Because you know what? At least the Pistons, they can get into the playoffs in a 1-year flip. With all the young talent, at least they can flip their season around and make the playoffs and be at least fun. Even if they don't win a playoff series, at least they can be fun. It's one of those things where, and I know this is not Steve Yzerman's problem. I know he can't control this, but it's just really sick when literally every single team, including the major college, Michigan and Michigan State football and basketball team, have both had at one point, or every single team, they've all had at some point some breakthrough of success. Whether it's the Tigers making the playoffs last year and winning a playoff series, whether it's the Tigers right now, running away with the division, whether it's the Pistons last year making the playoffs and ending their playoffs win drought, whether it's the Lions winning back-to-back North titles, whether it's Michigan State winning the freaking Peach Bowl in 2021, Whether it's Michigan winning the national championship in football, whether it's Michigan State and Michigan both winning college Big Ten championships in basketball. I know it's not Steve Eiserman's problem. I know he didn't choose for every other team to be successful, but boy, does it look terrible when every other team that people care about in the state of Michigan has success before he can even make the playoffs in a league where half the league makes the playoffs. So I ask again, how far away do you think this team really is? And if it's more than 3 years, why are you still, a believer in Steve Eiserman? And if you are still a believer in Steve Eiserman and you think it's less than 3 years, show me the blueprint for what they have to do and what they will have to do next year specifically. Not just, what the team is going to look like 2-3 years from now. I want to know what this team has to do this offseason to show you that you still believe, and further what the team has to be like next year. Because if it's anything other than making the playoffs and even making a little bit of noise in the playoffs, then what is even the point? Last I checked, and maybe I'm just a stupid idiot who doesn't know anything about hockey. Last I checked, we play the games to win Stanley Cups, especially in Detroit. I think we know a little bit about that. But hey, I don't know. I don't know as much about hockey as Steve Eiserman, so I'm just a big dummy, right? That's probably right. It's funny. There was on one of the clips that I uploaded for the Red Wings where I jokingly said, well, I don't know how to skate, so of course I don't know anything about hockey. Somebody in the comments, unironically, was like, you just admitted you don't know how to skate. How can we take you seriously? Like, I also can't slam dunk a basketball, so does that mean I can't I can't hit a 3 consistently? I can't throw a perfect spiral. I can't make a one-handed catch. I can't hit a baseball. Hockey is the only sport where people, if you comment in any way on hockey negatively, people are like psychopaths. It's like they lose their faculty for a reason, and they're just like, oh, you don't know puck. You don't even know about the SHL. That's right. I don't know about the SHL. I have a job. I have a job and I have friends. Isaac Howard. I'm assuming this is on offensive line. I'm assuming this is offensive line. It could be. I don't know. We were talking Red Wings there for a while. So that's the negativity. Let's move to something a little bit more fun / I don't know, thought-provoking. So a similar vein to the Stanley Cup Finals, with the NBA Finals now set, I think I have something of an interesting thought that I came through with when we see now it's going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder taking on the Indiana Pacers. Two teams that seem to me to be largely built very similarly. Let me explain. On the one hand, with the Thunder, you had, it was a massive trade where they trade away Paul George and they bring in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and they build the entire team around him. You draft guys like Chet Holmgren and Williams, that sort of thing, right? You build around that guy and you make some moves. I mean, obviously they had Josh Giddey for a while there. That was that one didn't work out. But you go out and you get Isaiah Hartenstein and you get Alex Caruso, and you look at where they're at now. Elite stud team. None of those moves, though, I think, in my humble opinion, are the splash, big red news alert, breaking news, such and such player got traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, I guess you could say it was Shai, but here's the problem. On the other end of that trade was actually the quote-unquote splash move, which was the Clippers going to trade for Paul George. So the splash move in that particular case, well, look at the Clippers. Paul George is no longer on the team. So that tells you exactly how well that trade worked out for Los Angeles. On the losing end of the Western Conference, you had the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, you remember the Wolves, they had Karl Anthony Towns, they still have Anthony Edwards. They had a lot of young talent. Then they go out and they make a big trade and they get Rudy Gobert. Overall, I think that trade has worked out. I mean, you look at where the Utah Jazz are, they have a lot of picks and they might have a bright future, but right now, Utah is not very good. Rudy Gobert is thriving. Very good defensive player at the very least, joking aside. But the team can't quite get through. And last year, they would go out and they get Julius Randle, and what I thought was kind of a win-win trade for the Minnesota Timberwolves and the New York Knicks, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But, they've made splashy moves. I think trading for Rudy Gobert and the package they gave up for him, I think that was something of a splashy move. And Julius Randle, similar deal. Although, I guess at that point, maybe Julius Randle was not seen in the same splashiness as Karl Anthony Towns. Either way. On the other end of it, Indiana Pacers. Now, obviously, Tyrese Halliburton. That was a trade acquisition from the Sacramento Kings. You also have Pascal Siakam, who is a trade acquisition from the Toronto Raptors. They have drafted guys, but not exactly, they didn't draft in the same way that the Oklahoma City Thunder did, just frankly. They did, but they didn't. And that team is largely built upon kind of, glue guys. Is Miles Turner a superstar? No. Pascal Siakam, a star. I don't know if you'd go as far as to say superstar. Tyrese Halliburton, that obviously turned out to be, I guess, similar to the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander trade, where they find a guy in Sacramento and they bring him into a great situation, and he blossoms. Then you got the losers on that end, the New York Knicks. Now, their roster was pretty much entirely splash moves. Like, very little draft guy, develop guy. They get Jalen Brunson from the Mavs. They get Karl Anthony Towns from the Wolves. They get, oh my gosh, what's his name? Wasn't Josh Hart, I believe, in a trade? I could be wrong about that. They go out and they get a bunch of guys. And what's his name? Anunoby. That was a trade. They primarily pluck from other teams. And the thing is, all four of those teams, I think, very good teams. Very well built. Now, how does this all tie into the Pistons? Two of those teams that made the finals. The one primarily did it without major splash moves. Did they make moves for guys? Of course they did. Did they give up assets for guys? Of course they did. Nobody's denying that. Let's stop. And let's stop pretending that people are denying that. But did they also develop and wait on guys to reach their pinnacle? Yes, they did. They took on a very young Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and slowly but surely developed him to be an MVP. Chet Holmgren was a very raw prospect coming out of Gonzaga. He even got hurt his rookie year. A couple of years later, he's a solid contributor to their team. Alex Caruso was a perfect fit defensively for them. They had to get rid of a Josh Giddey primarily because of some other stuff, but they made some somewhat risky moves, but they weren't, there was never a point, I think, where you said, oh my gosh, Oklahoma City, they won the offseason, right? There was never that point where there was like a day where Oklahoma City was just bam, 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 bam. Indiana, kind of similar deal. Outside of the Pascal Siakam, I can't even really think of a major move that they've made outside of just maintaining the guys they've had. It's just, they didn't just throw everything out that they had. They found the guys that they like. They're glue guys. They're foundation guys who put on season tickets. And they just kind of, for lack of a better term, they let it cook. The one major team, however, and again, I'm not trying to dog on these teams. The Knicks, this is a perfect point. Brunson, free agent. Cat, trade. Hart, trade. OG, trade. Bridges, trade. That's the starting five. that's their starting lineup. None of it was a draft guy. None of it was, trade for a young prospect. None of it was, pick up a guy in free agency that nobody cares about and let it develop and let it prosper. I guess I say all of this to suggest there is a valid and there is a reasonable take that the Pistons don't have to make a splash move to become a championship contender in this league. They don't. I mean, if you really want to argue that the Alex Caruso deal last year for OKC was the splash move, you can argue that, and I could call you crazy. Like, that's not a splash move. I don't even know if Alex Caruso has been an all-star. Like, maybe he's been an all-star once or twice, but he's not a splash move. He's not, going and trading for Zion Williamson, all right? He's not going and trading for Devin Booker or et cetera, that sort of thing. Not to say that those moves can't work out. Obviously, you have Pascal Siakam. That's a guy, again, who's a solid guy, but not, a super, not in that same echelon. I could go back and look it up, but I don't think Indiana had to give up massive, current young players that were, very well established to that point. The thing I just want to relay home to Pistons fans on both sides of this is to get mad that people want a big move. I think is kind of stupid. To get mad that people don't necessarily want a big move is equally stupid, because ultimately what everybody actually just wants is they want the right move. And all four of those Final Four teams told me there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to, do this. All four of those teams, frankly, they all four could have ended up in the finals. Maybe outside of Minnesota because they were just kind of getting mollywopped, but all four of them were good enough teams. I think we need to just, rather than say Pistons need a big splash or Pistons can't have a big splash, they need to just let it cook. They need to maintain. How about we just take a step back and say, okay, the free agency class, it kind of blows. So if they're going to make moves to change this roster, it's going to be in a trade. Let's just see what they do and evaluate. Right? Look, and here's the thing. Chauncey Billups, Allen Iverson, I know. I understand. Here's the thing. For all the Chauncey Billups, Allen Iversons of the world, you have the opposite where it does work out. Like, Kristaps Porzingis to the Celtics, right? But again, we're talking about not guys who are kind of albatrosses. And I don't know. Maybe it does work out if this is what happens. If the Pistons were to trade for, let's just say, Zion Williamson, that has Allen Iverson written all over it. I'm just being honest. I'm not saying that it will work out that exact same way, but that's the feeling I get. The Pistons have a very interesting offseason ahead of them. They have the assets to make a move. They also have the young prospects to develop. It's not one shoe fit or one size fits all. You have a variety of things you can do. And if this NBA Finals has shown me anything, it's shown me that all of those paths are perfectly legitimate and perfectly, within successful, bringing you to the next level, right? Obviously, I would love to see that Robin to Cade's Batman. Maybe that guy's on the team. And Jaden Ivey, maybe he's not. I don't know. Jaden Ivey, when he's healthy, was really good. I don't know. We'll see. But I guess when I watched the finals, when I watched the playoffs, I just thought to myself, it just kind of feels like all four of these paths, I'd be okay with the Pistons taking. Honest to goodness, I really would. If the Pistons went out and they just, started picking up superstar studs, if they go out, they get Zion, they get Devin Booker somehow, I'd be like, okay, I'm game with this. This could be fun. Or it might not work out. I don't know. Or if they say, you know what? We're going to be a little bit more conservative. We're going to pick up some guys. We're going to add some pieces. We're going to upgrade at this position. We're going to add a little bit more depth, and we're going to continue to develop guys. I'd also be like, you know what? I'm fine with that too. Maybe I'm just a homer, but I kind of just feel like I'm good with whatever we do as long as it corresponds to making the team better, which we'll only know once we see the actual moves that are get made. Yeah, I mean, problem with the Blake Griffin thing. I mean, this is the thing about this Pistons team is you're kind of in a weird spot because unlike the Blake Griffin thing, that wasn't really a young team that you were dealing with a team where you're kind of just maintaining Andre Drummond and some of the other guys that were on that team that I don't even want to speak their names into existence. And you're like, okay, we need a push. And so we did the Blake Griffin thing. And naturally, that team was just, it just wasn't built for any sort of sustained success. And contrary to popular belief, because there's this sentiment among some people who hate the sustained success thing, that sustained success means you're not winning a championship, you're just good enough all the time. No, sustained success means you're always competing for a championship. Not that you never win it. That is just stupid. Okay, like everybody in their right mind would want to be, I don't know, to make a football analogy, everyone in the right mind would want to be the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, the Chiefs win the Super Bowl every year? No. Last year was proof of that. But that's like people's straw man, and it is kind of annoying. Like when you hear like, oh, you want to be like the Steelers? You want to be like the Penguins? I don't know why it's two Pittsburgh teams, but boy, that Pittsburgh just got strays. It's like, well, no, of course not. I don't want to be the bad thing. I want to be the good thing. I'd rather be, I don't know, the Florida Panthers and the Boston Celtics and the Golden State. Well, maybe not the Golden State Warriors. And the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'd rather be those. But, hey, sure. I just want to be the bad thing, and you just want to be the good thing. That's how life works. Anyway. I thought that was kind of interesting. No? Just me? Okay. Let's see. Yeah. Patrick Ewing obviously was drafted, although that draft lottery was totally rigged, man. It's so rigged. Everyone knows Melo was a trade as well. Yep. It's true. Yeah, when was the last time? I mean, is it really Patrick Ewing was the last time the Knicks drafted a guy? I mean, I guess Porzingis. Or what do they call him? They called him like Bleep Bloop or whatever his name was. that video of that Knicks fan reacting to, who the heck is Creep Cop Baloopadoo? Like Pingus Zingus or something like that. Oh, let me see if I can find that. Just because we're in the in between of a segment here. Knicks fan reacting to Porzingis. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, who is Tingus Pingus? So good. And it turned out to be a pretty good player. Turned out to be a pretty darn good player. Also, speaking of the Knicks, Tom Thibodeau getting fired today. Not right before, but a few hours before we go live. I just gotta say, hate to see it. Look, is he a good coach? Yes, of course he's a good coach. But there is a but. My thought is sometimes coaches like this, they just kind of have a ceiling where, they're going to get you to very successful. They're going to help toughen players up, but they're just not going to get you over that edge. And I know this is going to sound mean because he's in the NBA Finals right now, but Rick Carlisle was like that for the Pistons back in the day, where Rick Carlisle, he brought the Pistons kind of back to relevancy. Pistons were a really good team. They had a lot of players. They had shown a lot of promise. What'd they have to do? They had to go get a championship winning coach in Larry Brown. And Larry Brown, obviously, to that point, hadn't won an NBA championship. But Larry Brown, I mean, he is one of the most, I don't want to say underrated because I think he's a Hall of Fame coach. I'm pretty sure he's already been inducted, but he's one of the most successful. He's won in college, he's won in the pros, but he's done it all. He is one of the wasn't Coach Pop under him? I'm pretty sure Coach Pop was a student of his, which is crazy. Anyway, I could go on and on about how much I love Larry Brown. Larry Brown is my he was my Chuck Daly. I know a lot of old school Piston fans, Chuck Daly is their guy. Larry Brown's my guy. I love Larry Brown. He's such a he just we didn't keep him for very long, but he is the only one who got us a championship. So it's not like what's his name? Babcock on the Red Wings where everybody just hated him. I still don't really understand that. I don't know. I mean, whatever. Maybe he was just a total jerk. There was the whole thing he did with the Blue Jackets with the cell phone. That was kind of weird. But like he won a Stanley Cup. It's like he can't. You still hate the guy? Like how did? Okay. Also, you pointing out this roster of the Pistons that just makes me very angry. It just makes me I read those names and I just blood starts to boil. Andre Drummond, Luke Kennard, and Reggie Jackson. That is, oh my gosh, wow, that's just so bad. That's so bad. Wow. We really ran teams out that had that starting lineup, man. That's so bad. What is the worst, like looking back, what's like the worst roster that you thought was actually going to be good? I think, you know what? I already know mine. I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to be really embarrassed. All right. Here we go. You guys ready? Mine is the 2022 Detroit Tigers. This was the roster that I thought was going to be much better than it actually was. Okay, you ready for this? This is your starting 9, okay? Get ready. Tucker Barnhart was your catcher. Spencer Torkelson playing first base. Jonathan Scope playing second. Your shortstop, Javier Baez. Playing third, Jamer Candelario. In left field, Akil Baddoo. In center field, Riley Green. Playing right field was Victor Reyes. And the designated hitter was Miguel Cabrera. Man, that roster was terrible. like you know it's bad when only 3 out of the 9 guys are even still on the team. I guess those 3, I mean, Javier Baez is just now having a good year, but the other 2, Riley Green has been outstanding, and Spencer Torkelson has developed much better. But even like, oh my gosh, you want to go down a list of like guys off your bench? Guys, this is gonna hurt to actually state out loud. So we're gonna do it together. You had Harold Castro, you had Willie Castro, the future All-Star. You had Eric Haas, your backup catcher, Robbie Grossman, Austin Meadows. Nobody knows where he is. I actually wish him the best, but nobody knows where he is. Cody Clemens, son of Roger. Kerry Carpenter was on that roster on the back end. You know, he came through a little bit. Derek Hill, Ryan Kreidler. I remember there was a guy on the Detroit Tigers Discord server, which I'm no longer in because we're just going to leave it at that. He was convinced that Ryan Kreidler was going to be good. And like even like last year, I remember him talking about how stupid I was for saying Ryan Kreidler was awful. Sometimes sports fans, it's like they don't want to see what's right in front of them. Anyway, Daz Cameron, Dazzlin' Daz, son of Mike Cameron. Zach Short. His position was MI. Middle infield. Okay. That's like, what's middle infield? Okay. I don't even know this. Brendan Davis? I don't remember him. He was a utility player. I genuinely do not remember Brendan Davis. He had 10 at-bats in his career, so I don't know if he remembers it either. He had just 2 hits. He wasn't very good, in case you were wondering. Justin Garneau and Josh Lester. Yeah, Jake Rogers was hurt. Yeah, Jake Rogers, I believe, had Tommy John surgery. Like if I remember correctly. Oh my gosh. Now we're getting into the pitching staff here. This was the roster that I believed in, and it turned out to be the most embarrassing mistake of my life. Okay, you ready for this? All right. Tarek Skubal. He was good. I mean, by his standards, he wasn't that great, but he was, whatever. Like by then, he was the best pitcher on the staff. Drew Hutchison. Tyler Alexander, a.k.a. Todd the Painter. If you know, you know. Eduardo Rodriguez, Bo Brisky was a starting pitcher. And your sixth starting pitcher was Matt Manning. You know it's bad when only one of these players is still a starting pitcher for you. I mean, I guess it's good in a sense because that starting pitcher rotation is terrible. But, you know, Bo Brisky is one of your starting pitchers. Man, that's crazy. And Casey Mize got hurt that year too. That was a nightmare. In your relief roles, you had Gregory Soto, Alex Lang, Jason Foley, Andrew Chafin, and Joe Jimenez. Not a single one of them are on the team anymore. Not a single one. I guess Andrew Chafin might be in the, I think he's still in the minor leagues, but all the rest of them are. I think Jason Foley had a season-ending injury. So, and then I'm not gonna. Oh, actually, you know what? We will go through some of these pitchers. Will Vest, he's still on the team. Actually, a really solid player. So there you go. You got Will Vest, Garrett Hill. I remember he was terrible. Alex Faedo, terrible. Ronnie Garcia, don't even remember him. Michael Pineda, terrible. Michael Fulmer, former Rookie of the Year, Michael Fulmer, terrible. Willie Peralta, terrible. Joey Wentz, apparently he plays for the Pirates, or he played. I don't know if he's still playing. Elvin Rodriguez, here's the thing I remember about Elvin Rodriguez. Elvin Rodriguez was on a John Boy breakdown because he was tipping pitches, and the Yankees were just lighting him to Kingdom Come. It was great. Daniel Norris, a.k.a. future Reese Olson. Jose Cisnero, Gui, was not good. Jacob Barnes, not good. Brian Garcia. Angel De Jesus, not good. Casey Mize, he got hurt. Drew Carlton, don't even remember. And then these are all, I think, the position players. Luis Castillo. Not that Luis Castillo, right? No. Different Luis Castillo. Isn't there a Luis Castillo that's good? Am I crazy? Yeah, different Luis Castillo. Oddly enough, both played for the Mariners. Oddly enough. Yeah. And it's crazy because one of them is still on the team. And is actually pretty good. One of them still on the team and pretty decent. Did Riley Green just hit a home run? Is that what I missed? Oh no, it's just a line drive. Okay. Like, what was that? They kept showing it, and I was like, did I miss something? Leadoff single. Okay. Torkelson batting now 235. I need that average to go up, Torkelson. I need you to be batting like 250. At least. Is that too much to ask? I know he's still got like an 800 plus OPS, so I'm not like losing my mind, but still. I'd like for him to be a little bit more of a consistent hitter. In my opinion. No more an overall pick. Is that really asking too much? Kerry Carpenter, yeah. Yeah, that's his name. That's 3 home runs yesterday. Yeah, speaking of the Tigers, so right now, scoreless game against the White Sox. They won the opening set last night. They won it by a score of 1,000,000,000-1. No, 13-1. Tigers have had a crazy good week. Swept the Giants last week. Won 2 out of 3 on the road against Kansas City, which was a big series to win. And look, Parker Meadows comes back. He hits a couple of extra base hits, gets a couple of walks. He seems to have not missed a step. However, a bit of sad news. Jackson Jobe. He goes down with some elbow tendon injury. All right. I'm not afraid to say it. It sounds like Tommy John before Tommy John. And that sucks. I don't know why my voice cracked right there. That sucks. That sucks because Jackson Jobe, rookie, you're hoping for his, development to continue. And I hope it's not Tommy John for the record. But it is, when we're talking about elbow and we're talking about pitcher, that's what I think of, basically. Now, and this is going to sound cruel, if it's going to happen to anyone, I'd rather it happen to him. Because Casey Mize is having a great year, despite a rough start against Kansas City. Tarek Skubal is Tarek Skubal. Reese Olson, he should be back relatively soon, but he's dealt with some injury stuff there. And as far as your bullpen goes, you got a lot of guys that you don't want to lose, like your Will Vests, your mostly Will Vests. I guess other guys. Your Tommy Caneleys, those kind of guys. Here's what I'll say about this. If you just look ahead at the schedule, especially for the month of June, are we really actually going to even miss not having Jackson Jones? Or any, like, let me just read off the teams that we got to play here. And obviously, we still got tonight's game and then the next 2 games against the White Sox. Then after that, you got the Cubs at home. You got the Orioles on the road. You got the Reds at home, the Pirates at home, the Rays on the road, the Athletics at home, and the Twins at home. That sounds pretty good. That sounds like you can really jump ahead here. Like, I don't like to, get ahead of myself. Take it one game at a time. Any given day, any team in the major leagues can win. It's not, it's not as easy and in the any series you can just randomly lose. I mean, like last year, let's be honest with ourselves. Okay, last year you had the Tigers beating the Dodgers in 2 out of 3 games. I think it was 3. 2 out of 3 games. Is that real? Or was that real? No, last year the Tigers were a good playoff team, but not a World Series team that the Dodgers were. Any given series, any team can win, obviously. But I mean, it's the White Sox. I don't want to be mean, and of course, I hope that doesn't come back to bite me and the White Sox end up winning the series. But it's the White Sox. The toughest series you're going to have is this weekend against the Cubs. Every other team outside of the Twins, I believe, have a losing record. I think maybe the Rays have an above 500 record. I'm not totally sure about that. But every one of those games, obviously, having the best record in baseball means you're better, in theory, than every team you're going to be playing. We could really get ahead to the point where the Tigers are at, comfortably 50 wins at the end of the month. Like, which is crazy. It's great. We could be a 50-plus win team going into the All-Star break. I can't really explain it other than development and the right offseason moves, the right guys being plugged in at the right places by AJ Hinch. But again, the schedule is favorable, especially this month. So the Tigers need to take advantage. I don't want the Royals, who just called up their top prospect, Caglione, to feel like they can make a comeback. I definitely don't want the Guardians, who beat us in the last 4 games that we played against them, to feel like, okay, we can always, reliably beat them when we play them. So as long as we stay within range. No. Right now, what's our lead in the standings? Right now, 6.5 games ahead of Cleveland. That's fairly comfortable, but if we could make it 8 games, 7.5 games, if you can make it 9 games going into the All-Star break, crazy things can happen, and baseball is a long season for a reason. But you get that comfortable of a lead, you might as well start popping the champagne, because you could be in clinching position going into the final week of August, which would be great. But we'll see. This is probably, and I haven't looked at the other months, this is probably the easiest month of schedule that the Tigers will have for the rest of this season. So you got to take advantage. And I think there's no reason to believe they won't take advantage, just given the way that they play bad teams. And we saw it last night. We play bad teams, we kill bad teams. It happens. We used to be that bad team. So, you hate to see it. You hate to see it if you're the Chicago White Sox. It's crazy. The Chicago White Sox, the Pope is a fan of theirs, but that doesn't seem to be altering their fate, unfortunately for them. So, I don't know. Apparently not even Pope Leo XIV can save the White Sox. Apparently. That's a very good point as well. Wenzel Perez having a decent return as well. He's at bat right now. He's got a 3-2 count. And there it is. He just hit a line drive right into the glove of right fielder. Okay. I'm not that mad about that. I thought he got a base hit. I really did. Yeah, he worked a full count and he lines out. All right, it's not ideal, but not terrible either. But anyway, that's the show. So if you enjoyed, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. Look, it actually does help. I check the subscribe, and I hit, I check when I see like the likes and everything. Do it if you haven't already, because I want to see the channel grow. I'd like to get to 500 subscribers before the end of the year. That'd be pretty cool. So, help out. Share the show. Share it with friends. If you have friends who are looking for a fun sports show that's primarily focused on Detroit sports, but we talk about other sports as well. Share the show. Anyway, we're gonna get going here. I'm gonna hopefully watch the Tigers knock the doors off the White Sox. We will be back next Tuesday to break down all the sporting news of the week. Hope to see you guys there, and have a good rest of your night. I got nothing more to say. I don't know. The outros are hard. Have a good night, everybody. I'll talk to you guys next week. See ya. See you later. Goodbye. Goodbye.